Good afternoon, my name is Justin Hogan. I'm joining you from Hong Kong, and I'm proud to introduce today Veronica Pang, who's also in Hong Kong at Victoria Shanghai Academy, who's going to be sharing her presentation, Pokémon EcoQuest, Unleashing Creativity and Curriculum Integration Through Nature-Inspired Design. Veronica was originally supposed to present this at our conference in Hong Kong earlier in the year, was unable to, and so we're very glad to have this last session of the online streaming sessions this afternoon. So with that, I'll hand it over to Veronica. Thanks, Veronica.
All right, thank you so much, Justin, and welcome everyone. As Justin mentioned, my name is Veronica, and I'm just gonna go straight into it. We're gonna be talking about unleashing creativity. So my name is Veronica Pang. I am a primary tech and innovation coach at VSA. My Twitter handler is Pangveroni. And I've been in this role for 2 years now. But I've been teaching for over 10 years. My background is in science, and I'm always passionate to find ways to engage students in exploring scientific concepts in different ways. So it just so happens that in the next unit, one of the year two's unit, what they were learning about is the unit of inquiry is about nature inspires expression and creativity. One of the focuses that they were looking at is different perspectives. In previous years, all the students looked at when they're talking about nature and connected to science is they sat around, they created a 3D version of frog's life cycle. So my question when I came in as a learning coach is, how could I actually add some science into it? How could I foster student creativity? The whole focus of this unit was on student creativity. So before I dive in, let's get started. I wanted to kind of build a definition of what creativity is and what we can explore in different perspectives. So I have a code here that I'm hoping everyone can just scan in. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to just scan in, use your phone, and I'm gonna see if I can actually include that as well in the chat. And see if everyone can just kind of fill in. What I want to know from you is what your experiences of creativity is and what your thinking is. What would a creative learner be? What kind of attributes do you think that they all have? And in terms of how would creativity look in terms of science, how might it look in math? What are your experiences of creativity? What have you felt was very, very creative? So I've just shared a Padlet right here, and I'm hoping that you guys can just take a second to just type in what you think creativity is to you. And if you have any questions as well throughout, please pop the question in. Oh, thanks. Something that sparks humor or joy. That's good to know. Thank you so much. You should be able to see the Padlet. So if you can't see it, let me know. Yeah, you should be able to see it as well. Thinking out of the box, that's true. And now what do you think as a creative person that these are the attributes that all creative people should have? And maybe some examples that you have as well? Ooh, a self-expression as well. Yes, like unafraid of being wrong, maybe a risk taker, someone who might take risks as well. Do you have any examples of creativity that you might have actually seen as well that you thought maybe outside or maybe in your classroom or outside of your classroom that you thought, wow, that was super creative? Maybe you can type that in. Okay, so maybe we'll just go straight into it to kind of share what I thought about creativity as well. So what is creativity and how might it look like? When I look at creativity, one of the first thing that makes me think, maybe some of you already know, Bloom's taxonomy. That's something that every single teacher might know. It's at the very top. The reason why I think that is all the skills that are underneath requires creativity. that is required to actually make something creative. So let's look at the example. The reason why I put this example is something that I did with the year 2. We actually went out, we went on a nature walk. We then zoomed in. We were teaching them about close-up photography. We took one little picture. We then zoomed in, cropped it. Something that I was interested in, even as a little kid, was digital art. I actually considered about being in Toronto. They have a little college that one of the most renowned, this was something that I wanted to get into. And I looked into all sorts of different arts. I looked into how could I actually write on others, and how could I actually creatively change that into 3D art? How could I change different shapes? So then I thought, oh, this is something that I'm interested in. I taught kids how to then look into taking that one little piece of art. How do they copy it? How do they flip it around? How do they change it and make it into theirs? And so this was my definition of creativity. This is something that I thought about. So then I kind of thought about different giants as well, that I don't know if you guys actually know these people. If you do actually, can you put it down in the questions? If you think that you could name who these people are and why they were creative. I chose these for a very specific reason, people that were quite personal to me as well. So see if you can actually go back into the Padlet, see, or maybe even to the chat, if you can type in who these people are that you know, that would be great. I don't know if you're able to. Any comments that you're able to? Yeah, maybe under comments, see. All right, so for some of the first one, this one is Pythagoras. Pythagoras, why was he so creative? He actually created a very interesting thing. He used his knowledge of math. He wanted to highlight the whole idea of greed and what that was. He created a cup. If you fill it too much, it siphons and all your drink actually gets lost. That was a very creative creation. He used what he already knew, what he remembered in his own knowledge, and he created something new from it. We have Margaret Hamilton. This lady is amazing. She is the first self-taught coder, first software engineer. Not only was she was resilient. She knew that at that time, she was the first one. She didn't know anything about coding. She went and upskilled herself. She learned, and she was open-minded to new ideas. She was resilient. We have Banksy over here, who was also took really bold moves. He made a lot of political statement. Some people didn't quite enjoy it. But he interacted what he saw around us, and then he made it into different kind of art, and he creatively did that. We have I.M. Pei. He was in architecture. One of the things is he was known for using geometric shape, and his creativity actually stemmed from his resilience to do what others discouraged him from doing. In fact, many actually hated him for ruining the Louvre for many years before it became an iconic. It was an iconic juxtaposition between like what was modern and what was old. So all of these creative giants made me think, well, can I actually teach my students to be creative? And what would it look like? So the reason why I'm giving you guys so much examples is these are what students created as well. And I thought, wow, this is what was very, very creative. Students were creating lots of things that looked super colorful. They were just, copying and pasting, flipping images around, changing things. And they thought, wow, that was really creative. But I also saw that some students were not as engaged. We thought about creativity. One thing that these giants did, something that they were passionate about, something that they were interested in. Then I looked at, were students interested in this? I paid attention to kind of see around what students were actually doing. During lunchtime, one of the students actually came up to me, showed me a Pokémon card and said, oh, look, Miss Pang, we're not actually allowed these in the classroom. And I thought, oh, why? Why wasn't it allowed? I looked at what it was about. And I thought, oh, they're learning about nature. Paid attention to it. The students actually came up to me to say, oh, look, this is what Squirtle can do. This is what Charmander can do. Oh, and look, at Bulbasaur, they were talking about what their knowledge of nature is. And I thought, wow, this is something that students were invested in. And how could I actually look into it to cultivate their interest? So then I actually looked at different Pokemons and I thought, wow, look at Dragalge. And then we figured out Dragalge is inspired by a leafy sea dragon. We looked at the Pokemon creator who was inspired by all of this and that they were super interested into nature. And that was part of the reason. We then went a little further. I looked at Drowsy, we looked at Crocodile, we looked at Dugong, and we stopped a little bit because this was where students became more invested. One of the students put up their hand and said, wait a minute, I've actually been to a Malaysian zoo. I've seen a tapir before. And that was the connection. But one of the connections, they were able to connect it to the real world. But they didn't actually think about, well, wait a minute, this is actually connected to Pokemon. Students were interested. They were invested into looking at more Pokemons. And then they started making their connections. Wait a minute, I saw this in the zoo. And they were able to connect all the different qualities and the habitats and where these creatures lived and how in Pokemon world, it's very similar to the real world. This was something that was really, really interesting for them. So how do I even take it one step further? So now before I go to the next step, this is actually about in Netflix as well. In Netflix, the students, everyone watches Netflix. This is something that whether it's kids, whether it's adults, we watch Netflix. We just so happen to find Pokemon Concierge that started with, that showcased all these Pokemon. So I'm gonna try to see if I can press play. If not, maybe Justin might be able to help press it. I'm gonna see. Let's see if I could press.
I've got it ready to go, Veronica. I'll start it.
Yes, thank you, Justin.
I'm supposed to start working here today. My name is Haru.
Welcome to the place.
Our job is to take care of these Pokémon and ensure they enjoy the resort. In other words, you'll be the Pokémon concierge.
If I'm actually here.
That went very quickly.
It's the first time I felt so relaxed.
I want you to make the Pokémon feel the exact same way that you do.
Huh? The Pokémon don't exactly tell you what makes them happy. And I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. Well, most humans won't say it to your face either. They say things like, take a guess.
They're all pretty interesting, right?
Ah! This one is Hoppip. This is Mudkip. And the yellow one is Pikachu. No, I mean, it's Psyduck.
Let me show you around the dreamy place you stay. Everyone is smiling.
Now, let's have another fun day at work. Welcome to the Pokémon Resort. I wonder which Pokémon we'll meet today.
Thank you so much, Justin. So one of the things that I wanted to share so far with that video that all the kids watched as well is their connection to nature from that. The kids actually found while they were watching it, it was the real world mixed with their world, something that they're interested in as well. So that was a very interesting thing that we got kids to think about. It connected to us as well because the students went on a path and they went on a journey to the back of our school and they explored what they could find, and also it's a different nature. Then it kind of got us thinking, if Pokemons were in our world, what kind of Pokemons would we find in that trail? So because I wasn't able to find an exact same picture of that trail, I gave them more of what I found as a digital trail. This was AI generated as well, just to say a nature trail. So I asked the kids what kind of Pokemon they would create on this nature walk. And in that creative mindset, I got them to then design, we talked about each symbol. Each symbol represents a different part of nature. For example, if they were creating if they were creating a creature in the air, it would be with wings. If they were creating a creature in the grass, it would be the leaf. And you've got ground type, much like any other, we've got bug type, and we've got water type as well. So we were able to sort the different creatures, getting the kids to think about what kind of creatures they would be able to see and meet along their trail. We got students to then draw their own Pokemon. They started designing their own. From the design, what came up even more was as they actually designed it, I went back to the Pokemon card and I looked at what there was on a Pokemon card, and some interesting things came up. The students were able to actually point out that there are health points. We were able to do simple math with it. We talked about, wow, each Pokemon has a health point. Each Pokemon also has attack points. And if we actually zoom in, if you see in this little corner on the bottom, you can see that we can actually simulate a fight. What happens if one Pokemon fights another with the attack point? So we'll do a simulated math right now. What is 120 minus 9? So if you have a dugong with 120 health points, what happens if they were attacked down 90 points? Well, you guys think about that. Sure that we've got some mathematicians in there. And we've got 30 health points left. So the Pokemon is still alive. So when thinking about designing these cards, the students then had to start thinking about, ooh, what's the health point? The health point can't be more than the attack points. How many attack points would I be able to then look at? And for each Pokemon, we then looked at, some of the students even pointed out that there were weight. Each Pokemon actually weighed something, that there was height involved into it. So there were so many opportunities for them to actually think about numbers. We looked at different cards and we figured out that every single Pokemon had different health points. Every single Pokemon had different attack points, and there were bonuses as well. So this actually got the students thinking about math in that creative part. On top of that, when we looked at that, we also saw dugong, before it was dugong, was a seal. We brought in the idea not only of their habitat, where do they live? We looked at biomes, the different biomes that would make sense for that. We built in a whole world for that Pokemon. We then looked at evolution, the idea of evolution, of some traits that would carry over, some traits that might not carry over as the creature actually grows. So then the students had to kind of design, we gave them a design of basic cards. We gave them what would it be in stage 1, what would be in stage 2. Students had to think about different qualities of that. So on top of that, it also gave students an opportunity to build their literacy skills. On every single card, every single Pokemon actually had different traits and different attacks. They had to go in and describe their attack. They had to actually go step by step to also add creativity in there. So we had to use different ways on how that attack might come based on that animal, based on that creature, based on what they know about some similar creatures in their natural habitat. How would those creatures attack? They also had to add in what they know about different games as well too. This gave students opportunities to apply their creative writing in there as well. They had to analyze how other cards were. They had to read other cards before they actually crafted their own. So unfortunately, we were also limited with time. So here's an example of what students were able to create. As you can see, the health point, they actually changed. They thought they wanted it really, really big. But throughout the discussion, we were able to kind of talk about, wait a minute, you can't have it that big because maybe in stage 2, it would be a higher point. But what about stage 1? What about the basic stage? We had all of these conversations. The students had to think about what the special ability is based on their own drawings. They had to think about what are the strengths. Maybe in nature, what would this creature be weak against? These were all different aspects that we thought about and we planned it out, and the students reiterated and reiterated as well too. These were all different ideas. So when we think about the activity time right now, in your activity, I'm going to actually think about, what about if you were to design a Pokemon? And pen in hand, what if you were to draw a Pokemon? What kind of type would it be to fit in our nature trail? And in terms of basic, I set the parameters and I said, well, you won't be able to actually move past 200, but you also have attack points. You don't, when you're playing against another basic Pokemon, you can't actually go over that. You can't go over that point. So you don't want to just say the attack points is going to be over 200, because that's not a very fair game. That wouldn't be a very fun game as well. So we had to think about all of that. Thinking about your Pokemon that you might be conjuring in your head, what would be the special abilities that your Pokemon would have? What kind of strengths would your Pokemon have? What would it be weak against? So these were all the things that students had to actually consider. So in your mind right now, would you be able to draw a Pokemon? How long would it take? So have a little think about that. Maybe take a minute to see if you can sketch one out. Feel free to upload it in the Padlet that I shared. And examples of creativity, I'll share it again as well too, just to make sure it's been shared. So as we actually look at Pokemon as well, we actually looked at, well, how could we inject some other types of technology in there? When we looked at that, one of the things that I looked at was an app called Quiver. I don't know if anyone's ever used it before. But one of the things that we wanted to do was to try to bring that Pokemon to life. So students, aside from drawing it, they then had to draw it again. But we were able to actually, students were so invested in it, they were willing to draw it again and again. And each time it got better and better and better. Students were invested in it. Now, you can see here, as students brought it to life, they then downloaded on the iPad. They were able to bring the Pokemon to life. They were actually scanning it as well. You can see it on their iPad. It popped up. So for the next activity, I'm going to give you guys a couple of seconds just to download it. The reason why is I want you to just try this app. If you've got an Android, you can feel free to. If you've got an iOS, you can download it there. In the next activity, we're going to be looking at how to bring another. I'm going to show you how it might look like if you're bringing a student's drawing to life. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to just download it onto your phone. And welcome, Adam Lim. Good to see you. I just saw your comment. Good to see you from Manila. All right, so I'm hoping that you guys have downloaded it. So one of the things that we've actually, this is an example of another student. This is actually the same student. Remember earlier I showed you the basic form. We then went, okay, what if you actually take it one step further? How would your creature change? She changed the name a little bit. She then decided to actually put the health points as well. She gave it a special ability. She added more strengths to it. So with the app that you might have just downloaded, try to see if you can open it and scan this QR code at the very bottom in the Quiver. And then at the end, what I'm going to ask you to do is after you've opened up the app, scan that QR code, see if you can bring that bird to life. And all you have to do is move your phone over to the screen and see if you can bring that to life. Did anyone manage to do that? Hope so. So the reason why we did this activity was so we can actually see the students' creation come to life, their creativity come to life, their ideas as they build their habitat. There's actually, if we were giving them more time, they would even have more time to create the habitat around them, to create where would this bird live. where would this flyer live? What kind of things would they eat? How do they evolve? So from that, another thing that we actually looked at was actually from this activity, I wanted the students to see how it might look back in this space. So as we came back to this space, I asked them, what kind of Pokemon could you create on this nature walk? I brought their Pokemons into this land using Canva as well. So from Canva, I brought it up and I showed them how it might look over here. So from Canva, I was able to actually cut it out. I was able to remove the background. I was able to actually place their creations where they wanted based on their type, where they said that their type is. Some of them said my type belongs in the water, so I placed them in the water. Some of them said my type is a bug type, so I placed them on the ground. Some of them said my type is a ground type, so I placed them there as well. One said, oh, my type is actually in the air, so I placed them in the air based on that. So my question is, did you feel that students, were we creative in what we did? Where did we actually give ideas? Were the students open-minded to new ideas? Maybe at first they were thinking, oh, I can't actually create this. I can't create this Pokemon. They were stuck on their own Pokemon. And as the iteration came, they designed new Pokemon. Were the students taking risks to create a creature that has never been created? Once again, at the very beginning, they were thinking, oh, I'm going to create something that I'm familiar with. But as time passed and they continued to reiterate, they actually created a new creature. Did it ignite student passion for something else? What the most interesting thing was, months after, students came back to me and said, oh, look, this is what I created. I was so invested. They actually took it even further to continue. Another thing is, this is something that we want to think about. As a takeaway message, I want you guys to think about, like, how could you cultivate students to be more creative? What would you do for students in your area? I'm not quite sure. I mean, it would be interesting to actually hear where everyone else is from, where your background is. In your area, how could you be more creative? How could you get students to be risk takers? How could you get them to think outside the box? How could you get them to be more passionate about what they're learning about? At the end of the day, that's something that you want to think about. So this actually kind of wraps up a little bit of what I was sharing as well. I want you to just think about maybe if there's any questions or answers as well. Oh, QR code is too small to scan and quiver. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that. Maybe I can actually enlarge it, and let me see if I can actually see if I could make it a little bit bigger. I'll stop my share for now for a second and see. Is that all right, Justin? If I can actually see if I can make the QR code a little bit bigger. Let me see. I'll stop my share for a second and go back to my presentation and see if I could make that QR code a little bit bigger. Thanks for the feedback. That helps a little bit more. Let's see. Give me 1 second and then. Okay, let me just present this again and then see if you can actually, I'll come back to this one. Can you see if that works now? You should be able to scan it and you should be able to bring that creature to life.
It worked for me that time, Veronica.
Thank you. All right, so the reason why is it just kind of lifts up the student's work and brings it to life. So we were also able to use this app aside from year twos, we were able to use it with year ones as well when they were learning about life cycle as well. In year one, they were drawing life cycles and they were able to actually create their own as well and bring it to life. So that was a very good use of it. So in the last little bit, are there any questions or anything at all?
Yeah, feel
I know I ended a little bit early.
Questions in the chat. I have one question actually, Veronica. Did the kids actually play Pokemon with the cards they created?
Oh, thanks for asking. Actually, unfortunately, because of the time, we didn't. Next year, what I was planning is I want to see how that actually works because they were really, really invested in it. Because of the nature of I'm only in there for an hour, so it was a little bit hard to see. But next year, I want to actually see how that would work. We would take it one step further.
Yeah, it'd be great if you could have, build a collection of VSA Pokemon cards year on year, actually get them printed out. That would be pretty motivating, I think, for kids, right? If their card was going to become part of the school collection.
Yeah, that was my plan, actually. I was hoping to see if we can actually build it even further to make it, to make it even more interesting for the kids. They were so invested. I was blown away by how much they took in and they talked about evolution, how long they actually spent, which is why we didn't end up making the card because they were so invested in making it even better. They were making iterations of it. They were making a different evolution form of it. They kept going, can I make it bigger? Can I make it better? And they were just, it was really, really hard to stop them.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
This question here from how long did it take to complete this activity from start to finish?
So it took them a little bit, it took me a little bit of time. So each period that we had was 40 minutes. We did it over 2 periods but I can see that we can actually do it for longer. I think that we did it only for 2 periods, but I can definitely see it going for even 3 period or 4 period, where we could take it even deeper into maths, because that was the opportunity that they missed. Had we had 3 periods or 4 periods of 40 minutes, we would be able to get the students invested and playing around into competing with one another to see how that would work, to see if they could and to see if they could have only basic competing with basic, and how would stage 1 could compare with stage 1, and whether they can actually toss in stage 2 and how they could evolve that. Yeah.
That's great. If there's no other questions from the chat, I just want to say, Veronica, that was really interesting. I certainly learned a lot about Pokemon. My kids are both into Pokemon, so I feel like I can go back with and have a conversation with them about it a little bit more. Maybe I'll challenge them to create their own Pokemon cards, and I'm sure that you've done that for the people who have joined us today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Justin.
All right. Okay. All right. With that, we'll wrap this up. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you hopefully at the conference next year face to face.
All right, thank you. I hope so. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.